Okay, next we have a visiting writer, Shaun Haurin. He's the author of Public Displays of Affectation, a story collection. Affection? Mm-hmm. I'm sorry.
Affectation.
Is it Affectation? Yes. Okay.
Okay.
It's confusing title.
It is.
It's good. His work has appeared in Philadelphia Stories, The Ledge Poetry and Fiction Magazine, and the Baltimore Review. He's currently working on a novel as well as a linked story collection called The Weirdos Who Are Out to Get Us Must Be Stopped. Shaun Haurin.
Thanks for coming out. I follow football, not at all. But 'tis the season, and I happen to have a football story in my collection, of which I'm going to read you the last third. The only thing I think you need to know is that the protagonist is a mostly gay man. He's out in a bar with his coworker, a female coworker who's trying to seduce him. It's called Big Game. Truth be told, Gabriel wasn't attracted to many different kinds of men. Unlike his friend Roger, whose only prerequisite was that a potential lover have a penis, and preferably an American Express gold card carrying penis, Gabriel couldn't just tumble into bed with someone simply because that someone seemed willing, if not eager, to tumble into bed with him. Of course, there are always exceptions. Gabriel was 33, had first slept with a man about the age he was now, back when he was 19. Regrets, he had a few. But given the choice, Gabriel preferred to be drawn to his lovers. Yeah, as in drawn and quartered, Roger would say. The man making eyes at him from across the bar was a cliché. 7 o'clock shadow, shoulders broad as a buffalo's, hands like catcher's mitts. As a rule, Gabriel liked lanky guys, sinewy yet strong-limbed, very short hair, smooth chests. He wasn't a big believer in gaydar. Barring flamboyant behavior, he couldn't tell much from a person's hair or clothes or supposed body language. But he rarely even needed to. A person, man or woman, straight or gay, looks you in the eye the way this man was looking at Gabriel, and you just knew. Jana nudged him. Looks like somebody's got an admirer. She lifted her chin toward the bar where the man Gabriel had secretly dubbed Buffalo Bill was holding court. He turned back to his beer buddies who were engaged in a series of intricate hand slaps and headbutts in celebration of some favorite call or another. You think so? I don't know much, Jana smirked, but I know when a man wants me. She eyed Gabriel. Chalk it up to women's intuition. Gabriel was confused. Who? He said, only half feigning ignorance. With the tattoo? One of Bill's buddies was an exceptionally loud guy, loud even for these human foghorns. Bald and prodigiously goateed, he resembled nothing so much as an overfed walrus barking for another pound of fish. There was some sort of tattoo crawling up or down the back of what should have been his neck. Even cold sober, Gabriel's eyes weren't the best, and he was too far away to unscramble the image. Ew, no way, not with your junk. Jana got more mileage out of foul language than most men Gabriel knew. It wasn't unappealing. The one next to him, the lumberjock. It was a reference to Bill's plaid flannel and thermal undershirt combo. You mean Jack. You know him, squealed Jana. No. Lumberjack. You said jock. Jana's eyes narrowed to non-existence. I meant jock, she hissed. It's called a pun. I thought you studied lit. Oh, he said a long time ago. Could Jana be right? Could Buffalo Bill's X-ray vision really have been meant for her? She was still perched on his lap, after all, where the bar flavors of beer, cigarettes, and Old Bay mingled sickeningly with Jana's fruity perfume. Suddenly, Gabriel wanted this man more than he should have, more than he felt he had any right to. By rights, Bill belonged to Jana. This was her man, at her bar, in her world. If the man wasn't gay and Jana wanted him, there was nothing Gabriel could do about it, short of throwing himself at the guy, which more than likely would land him in the hospital. Jana looked lovingly over her shoulder at Gabriel and applied a bit more pressure to his lap. That's nice, she whispered boozily in his ear. That means a lot to me, Gabe. She asked something about Gabriel having his way with her, but he hardly heard her. He was busy thinking of all the pop songs associated with bison. Buffalo Soldier, Buffalo Stance, the YouTube video for one, in which a herd of stampeding buffalo runs over the edge of a cliff, and perhaps not incongruously, the band members appear in drag. Not one of them, not even pretty boy Larry Mullen, made very convincing women. Did you hear what I said, Gabe? Sorry, you should be. Janet tossed her fragrant hair in his face and leveled her heavy-lidded eyes at him. It was a look meant to convey that the always beautiful and infinitely charming Ms. Brown would not suffer another slight. She would commit Harry-Carry with her crab fork first. I asked whether or not you were ever going to kiss me. All at once the deafening noise in the room seemed to drain away. Gabriel had no choice but to blame it on the booze. The former English major in him kicked in, and he was reminded of a few favored lines by Wallace Stevens. It may be that in all her phrases stirred the grinding water and the gasping wind, but it was she and not the sea we heard. As House Siren, Janet's may have been the only song capable of drowning out the bar's din, but her range was hopelessly limited from a closeted gay man's point of view. Although Gabriel's desire was palpable, so palpable that he drunkenly feared it would puncture his pants, it also happened to be grossly beside the point. What Gabriel wanted Janet Brown couldn't give him. In fact, all the woman could really do was take. Still, what harm was there in a kiss? Clock's ticking, Gabe. What do they say? For a limited time only? Janet's face widened. She seemed to have multiple rows of teeth like a shark. Gabriel wished he could say that the alcohol blunted her features, made her enviably angular face sag a bit, her greenish blue eyes bulge, her lovely mouth go slack, but none of this was true. If anything, the booze brought Janet's beauty into sharper focus. She never seemed more in control of the situation than when there was a very real threat she might lose it. Some people were turned on by surrender in a lover, not Gabriel. As far as he was concerned, surrendering was his job. Janet, sensing as much, placed a warm hand on his thigh. Does this help? Without waiting for a response, she took Gabriel's face in her hands and pressed her mouth urgently against his, roughly parting his teeth with her tongue. She tasted pretty much the way she smelled, like a well-tended woman in a neighborhood bar. Gabriel's own tongue, that last post, had curled toward his throat when Janet Brown finally came to call, where it seemed intent on hiding until the unannounced guest got the hint and went away. Gabriel heard a collective cry of anguish and thought for a second that every fiber of his being was calling out in protest, if not in pain. Something, somehow, had gone horribly wrong. He opened his eyes in time to catch the replay. The home team had blown not one but two easy tackles, allowing its opponent to run 35 yards for a touchdown. He watched a shoeless player kick the ball through a huge yellow tuning fork and saw that the score was 14-3. The game clock read late in the fourth quarter. I'll be right back, cooed Janet. She slid off Gabriel's lap and straightened her short denim skirt. She was impossibly pleased with herself for someone who had just won a game of tonsil tennis by forfeit. Time to drain the pool. Janet wriggled her way toward the restroom. More than a few heads swiveled like spotlights in her direction. The largest and shaggiest of these heads, Gabriel couldn't help noticing, belonged to Buffalo Bill. Gabriel watched the massive man watch Janet slink past him. She didn't so much as glance at him, didn't acknowledge Bill at all as far as he could tell, and yet the very pulse of her body, from the slight sway of her arms to the easy swivel of her hips to the alternating steps of her ridiculously shod, cowboy-booted feet, seemed engineered to put her on display, to signal her as a woman designed to be devoured with one's eyes. Gabriel envied Janet's inebriated grace, the way she turned a crowded bar into a catwalk simply by setting her fluid body in motion. Gabriel considered leaving right then and there. He couldn't honor the devil's deal struck between his teeth and Janet's tongue, couldn't go through with whatever it was, marriage, kids, more consciousness-killing menage-a-trois with throat-scorching Jack Daniels, Janet expected of him. He attempted to stand but couldn't find the floor. His head felt like a flushed toilet. How could he make a seamless escape with the room rattling along like the Market Frankfurt L? That shirt's purple, pal, grunted someone from behind Gabriel. The small mountain of a man loomed over his cafe table, heaving. The trek across the packed bar had done him in. It was the walrus. He pointed an accusative finger at Gabriel. He might as well have been aiming a gun. Gabriel glanced down at what he was wearing and found that indeed his shirt was purple. The walrus knew his color chart. Or could the creature be objecting to what he perceived as a feminine color, and by extension an effete man, in such an undisputedly masculine environment? Did people overtly object to such things anymore? Gabriel's shirt wasn't made of silk, after all. It was neither blousy nor clingy, neither frilly nor sheer. It wasn't lavender or orchid or even legitimately plum. It was a plain purple shirt. He'd bought it secondhand. So what? Gabriel said. The syllables came out sounding more defiant than he'd intended. Everyone within earshot translated them as en garde. The walrus raised a paddle-flat flipper for what purpose Gabriel did not know, but suddenly stopped short, for Jana was beside him now. Lovely, glowing, unhappy Jana, with her boobs and her hair and her sluttish, double-edged smile. Gabriel smelled her before he felt her physical presence, her damp hand on his shoulder, her hip warm against his arm. The walrus's eyes widened in pure, childlike wonder. Gabriel's assailant hadn't noticed Jana before. His eyes had been glued to the game, the dope. It's not the same purple, Gabriel heard Jana say in his defense, though in comparison to what he still didn't know. Ah, Jana to the rescue, Jana like manna falling from heaven, instant babe in a box, just add beer. Gabriel's very own goddess from a machine. Jana glanced up at the nearest screen, which displayed 2 team emblems on either side of a chart of statistics. It was then that Gabriel realized that it wasn't the color the walrus objected to, though he seriously doubted the guy had a closet full of purple, unless it appeared in tandem with silver or black on his various hockey, football, and basketball jerseys, so much as where he'd seen the offending shade and when. On this particular night, in this particular game, purple was the color of the enemy. The walrus gave Jana the once-over and somehow still mustered the courage to grumble, close enough. He wasn't a hopelessly dumb beast, for experience had taught him that the only reaction he would be able to get from a woman like Janet Brown was a violent one. But that's okay. Violence was his forte. Gabriel saw Janet's hand close around the long handle of her 2-pronged shellfish fork. The old instincts were kicking in. My God, he thought in the slang of B-movie gangbangers, she's going to stick the guy. A faint smile played upon his lips. Go back to the bar, Janet ordered. He's not bothering anybody. Leave us alone. The walrus expelled a sour cloud of air in lieu of a laugh. Janet brandished her pathetic weapon. I said fuck off. Whoa, whoa, there's no need to get physical. His emphasis made the word sound blue. I'll make a deal with you, the walrus said. If he takes off the shirt, he can stay. He regarded buxom, short-skirted, cowboy-booted Janet Brown with all the nonchalance of a toddler regarding a chocolate Easter bunny. Scratch that, sweetness. If you take off your shirt, he can stay. Janet bit her freshly painted lip. She seemed to be considering the proposal. Jimmy, said a voice from behind Gabriel. It was deep and even, radio smooth. Gabriel turned and saw the kind eyes, easy smile, and muscle-stuffed farmland flannel of Buffalo Bill. You're embarrassing yourself, Jimmy. Go sit down. The walrus glared at him. Buffalo Bill placed a brown paw on his shoulder. Go sit down, Jimmy, he repeated, with all the patience of a seasoned priest. For me. Bill made it sound as though the walrus would be doing him a favor by honoring his request, though clearly it was the other way around. If anybody was being done a favor, it was the walrus, and he knew it. Still, he looked from Janet to Gabriel and back again. What with her pronounced face paint, roller coaster curves, and homespun sugar hair, the woman was a human amusement park. The walrus seemed to think he was being robbed of at least one ride. You're a lucky motherfucker, he hissed at Gabriel. Then, as emasculated as his favorite football team, he suavely blew Janet a parting kiss and waddled away. Sorry about that, said Bill. Jimmy takes sports far too seriously. Apparently, snorted Janet, you should keep that guy on a leash. Bill smiled knowingly. He'd only chew through it. Janet laughed, the sound of one seduction replacing another. Seducing Gabriel had been a challenge, a lark, but seducing Buffalo Bill was her stock in trade. Have a seat, she said, pulling up an empty chair. You don't want to miss the rest of the game. Bill sat down. Game's over, he said, catching Gabriel's eye. As if in extrasensory support of this pronouncement, the opposing team intercepted the ball. Within seconds, they were up another 7 points. The bar crowd bawled and beat their breasts. Bill casually pulled a lighter from his flannel pocket and lit the pity cigarette that had magically appeared between Janet's lips. Then he lit one of his own. Janet exhaled dramatically. Okay, now I'm bummed, she said through a puff of smoke. She looked far from bummed to Gabriel. She looked like the birthday girl, homecoming queen, and bride-to-be all rolled into one. Again, Bill smiled at Janet as one might smile at a lovingly crafted piece of furniture. More than his bulk or his easy banter or his obvious brains, it was the man's confidence that disarmed Gabriel. Self-assurance looked good on the guy. Like his Paul Bunyan get-up, he wore it well. I'm going to need to be consoled, Janet said, glancing back and forth between the two men. By somebody. she teased when neither one of them raised a hand. Or somebody's. Buffalo Bill lifted his eyebrows at Gabriel, who responded with a shrug. Gabriel meant the gesture as, who needs her, but Bill seemed to interpret it as, be my guest. Bill peered over his shoulder at his buddies at the bar. The game was still on, but all eyes were on him. The walrus, in particular, appeared to be wondering what could be keeping the reluctant leader of their unsavory pack. Sure, Bill said finally to Jana, seeming to avoid her companion's gaze. I'll console you. One for one, said Jana, utterly unsurprised. The guy could have torn open his shirt to reveal her initials shaved into his chest hair, and Gabriel's unfazed co-worker would have kept her legendary cool. How about you, Gabe? It wasn't the first time Gabriel had been presented with such an offer, and something in Jana's eyes implied she didn't expect to be turned down. Her staggering presumptuousness about her allure, about Bill's preference, about Gabriel's sexuality rankled him. That, and the ostensibly mindless way her hand had strayed to Bill's Popeye-like forearm, a wayward pet returning home. I'm going to finish this beer, wait out the rest of the game, he lied. See you at work. It was refreshing to see Jana look flustered. She glanced from Gabriel to Bill and back again, as though the two men had secretly decided something that had nothing at all to do with the fabulous female specimen seated between them. She nodded once as if to say, your loss, and left the bar without saying goodbye. Gabriel had an inkling Bill wouldn't actually go through with it. This was just an elaborate game some people played. The object was to see how far one was willing to go in order to dupe others and oneself. The more radical the extreme, the larger the score, though it became increasingly difficult round to round to keep an accurate tally. But Gabriel had underestimated his opponent. Sadly, Bill proved to be quite skilled at the game. He was likely the local champ. Bill rose and threw two 20s onto the rickety beer-ringed table. He glanced resignedly at the empty beer cans lining the walls like so many unread books, and presented a thick hand for Gabriel to take or not take. It was his call. Only it wasn't Gabriel's call, not really. And it was beginning to look like it never would be. Gabriel took the man's hand in his and couldn't resist giving it a light squeeze. It seemed to him in the mild euphoria that surrounds and precipitates such risks that Bill squeezed back. But maybe he was mistaken. Maybe Gabriel, desperate for evidence and half in love, only imagined the sensation, the way an amputee is said to imagine sensation in a limb that, despite what feels real, simply does not exist. Bill shot Gabriel a sad half-smile before letting go. Cool shirt, he teased. He turned and followed tipsy Jana Brown out to her truck where, like fair-weather football fans and diehards alike, they would spend what was left of the cold, hopeless night, or at least what remained of the big game, trying to console each other. Thank you.